everyone. I thought I'd read a book for y'all. Let's go ahead and get reading. This book is to be neither an accusation nor a confession, and least of all, an adventure. For death is not an adventure to those who stand face to face with it. It will try simply to tell of a generation of men who, even though they may have escaped its shells, were destroyed by the war. Chapter 1. My mic moving? Let's see here. Got the mic. Cool. Time check 1:30. We are at rest 5 miles behind the front. Yesterday we were relieved, and now our bellies are full of beef and haricot beans. We are satisfied and at peace. Each man has another mess tin full for the evening. And, what is more, there is a double ration of sausage and bread. That puts a man in fine trim. We have not had such luck as this for a long time. The cook with his carroty head is begging us to eat. He beckons with his ladle to everyone that passes, and spoons him out a great dollop. He does not see how he can empty his stew pot in time for coffee. Tajin and Mueller have produced 2 wash basins and had them filled up to the brim as a reserve. In Tajin, this is veracity. In Mueller, it is foresight. Where Tajin puts it all is a mystery, for he is and always will be as thin as a rake. What's more important still is the issue of a double ration of smokes. 10 cigars, 20 cigarettes, and 2 quids of chew per man. Now that is decent. I have exchanged my chewing tobacco for Kaczynski for his cigarettes, which means I have 40 altogether. That's enough for a day. It is true we have no right to this windfall. The Prussian is not so generous. We have only a miscalculation to thank for it. 14 days ago, we had to go up and relieve the front line. It was fairly quiet on our sector, so the quartermaster, who remained in the rear, had requisitioned the usual quantity of rations and provided for the full company of 150 men. But on the last day, an astonishing number of English heavies opened up on us with high explosive, drumming ceaselessly on our position, so that we suffered severely and came back only 80 strong. Last night we moved back and settled down to get a good sleep for once. Kaczynski is right when he says it would not be such a bad war if only one could get a little more sleep. In the line we have to do next to none. We have had next to none, and 14 days is a long time at one stretch. It was noon before the first of us crawled out of our quarters. Half an hour later, every man had his mess tin, and we gathered at the cookhouse, which smelt greasy and nourishing. At the head of the queue, of course, were the hungriest. Little Albert Kropp, the clearest thinker among us, and therefore only a lance corporal. Mueller, who still carries his school textbooks with him, dreams of examinations, and during a bombardment mutters propositions in physics. Lear, who wears a full beard and has a preference for the girls from officers' brothels. He swears that they are obliged by any army ordered to wear silk chemise and to bathe before entertaining guests of the rank of captain and upwards. And as the fourth, myself, Paul Baumer, and 4 are 19 years of age. and all four joined up from the same class as volunteers of the war. Close behind us were our friends, Tajin, a skinny locksmith of our own age, the biggest eater of the company. He sits down to eat as thin as a grasshopper and gets up as big as a bug in a family way. Hay Westus, of the same age, a peat digger who can easily hold a ration loaf in his hand and say, "Guess what I've got in my fist?" Then Dieterine, a peasant who thinks of nothing but his farmyard and his wife. And finally, Stanislaus Kaczynski, the leader of our group, shrewd, cunning, and hard-bitten, 40 years of age, with a face of the soil, blue eyes, bent shoulders, and a remarkable nose for dirty weather, good food, and soft jobs. Our gang formed the head of the queue before the cookhouse. We were growing impatient, for the cook paid no attention to us. Finally, Kaczynski called him to say, "Say, Henrik, open up the soup kitchen. Anyone can see the beans are done." He shook his head sleepily. "You must all be there first." Tajin grinned. "We are all here." The sergeant cook still took no notice. "That may do for you," he said, "but where are the others?" "They won't be fed by you today. They're either in the dressing station or pushing up daisies." The cook was quite disconcerted as the facts dawned on him. He was staggered. "And I have cooked for 150 men. Crop poked him in the ribs. "Then for once we'll have enough. Come on, begin." Suddenly, a vision came over Tajin. His sharp, mousy features began to shine. His eyes grew small with cunning. His jaws twitched, and he whispered hoarsely, "Man, then you got bread for 150 men too, huh?" The sergeant cook nodded absent-minded and bewildered. Tajin seized him in the tunic. "And sausage?" Ginger nodded again. Tajin's chaps quivered. "Tobacco, too?" "Yes, everything." Tajin beamed. "What a bean feast! That's all for us. Each man gets, wait, a bit. Yes, practically 2 issues." Then Ginger stirred himself and said, "That won't do." We got excited and began to crowd around. "Why won't that do, you old carrot?" demanded Kaczynski. 80 men can't have what is meant for 150. "We'll soon show you," growled Mueller. "I don't care about the stew, but I can only issue rations for 80 men, persisted Ginger. Kaczynski got angry. "You might be generous for once. You haven't drawn food for 80 men. You've drawn it for the second company." "Good. Let's have it then. We are the second company." We began to jostle the fellow. No one felt kindly toward him, for it was his fault that the food often came up to us in the line too late and cold. Under shell fire, he wouldn't bring his kitchen up near enough, so that our soup carriers had to go much further than those of other companies. Now Bjolk, of the first company, is a much better fellow. He is as fat as a hamster in winter, but he trundles his pots when it comes to that right up to the very front line. We were in just the right mood, and there would certainly have been a dust-up if our company commander had not appeared. He informed himself of the dispute and only remarked, "Yes, we do have heavy losses yesterday." He glanced into the Dixie. "The beans look good," Ginger nodded. "Cooked with meat and fat." The lieutenant looked at us. He knew what we were thinking, and he knew many other things too, because he came to the company as a non-com and was promoted from the ranks. He lifted the lid from the Dixie again and sniffed. Then passing on, he said, "Bring me a plate full. Serve out all the rations. We can do with them." Ginger looked sheepish, and Tajin danced around him. "It doesn't cost you anything. Anyone would think the quartermaster's store belonged to him. And now get on with it, you old blubber sticker, and don't you miscount either." "You be hanged," spat out Ginger. When things get beyond him, he throws up the sponge altogether. He just goes to pieces. And as if to show that all things were equal to him, of his own free will he issued in addition 1/2 pound of synthetic honey to each man. Today is wonderfully good. The mail has come, and almost every man has a few letters and papers. We stroll over to the meadow behind the billets. Crop has the round lid of a margarine tub under his arm. On the right side of the meadow, a large common latrine has been built, a roofed and durable construction. But that is for the recruits who as yet have not learned how to make the most whatever comes their way. We want something better. Scattered about everywhere, there are separate individual boxes for the same purpose. They are square, neat boxes with wooden sides all around, and have unimpeachably satisfactory seats. On the sides are hand grips enabling one to shift them about. We move 3 together in a ring and sit down comfortably, and it will be 2 hours before we get up again. I well remembered how embarrassed we were as recruits in barracks when we had to use the general latrine. There were no doors, and 20 men sat side by side as in a railway carriage, so that they could be reviewed all at one glance, for soldiers must always be under supervision. Since then, we have learned better than to be shy about trifling immodesties. In time, things far worse than that come easy to us. Here in the open air, though, the business is entirely a pleasure. I no longer understand why we should always have shield at these things before. They are, in fact, just as natural as eating and drinking. We might perhaps have paid no particular attention to them had they not figured so large in our experience, nor been such novelties to our minds. To the old hands, they had long been a mere matter of course. The soldier is on friendlier terms than other men with his stomach and intestines. Three quarters of his vocabulary is derived from these regions, and they give an intimate flavor to expressions of his greatest joy, as well of his deepest indignation. It is impossible to express oneself in any other way so clearly and pithily. Our families and our teachers will be shocked when we go home, but here it is, the universal language. Enforced publicity has in our eyes restored the character of complete innocence to all these things. More than that, they are so much a matter of course that their comfortable performance is fully as much enjoyed as the playing of a safe top-running flush. Not for nothing was the word latrine rumor invented. These places are the regimental gossip shops and common rooms. We feel ourselves for the time being better off than in any palatial, white-titled convenience. There it can only be hygienic. Here, it is beautiful. Just so y'all know, I'm reading this book that became publicly in the public domain just not too long ago. So this was one I had to read in I think it was like junior high or high school. But anyways, that's what I'm reading, and I'm just gonna read this until I get tired. So I hope y'all enjoy. These are wonderfully carefree hours. Over us is the blue sky. On the horizon float the bright yellow sunlit observation balloons, and the many little white clouds of the anti-aircraft shells. Often they rise in a sheaf as they follow an airman. We hear the muffled rumble of the front, only as very distant thunder, bumblebees droning by quite drown it. Around us stretches the flowery meadow. The grasses sway their tall spears. The white butterflies flutter around and float on the soft, warm wind of the late summer. We read letters and newspapers and smoke. We take off our caps and lay them down beside us. The wind plays with our hair. It plays with our words and thoughts. The 3 boxes stand in the midst of the glowing red field poppies. We set the lid of the margarine tub on our knees and so have a good table for a game of scat. Krop has the cards with him. After every Miserere overt, I'm sorry, I don't know that word, we have a round of nap. One could sit like this forever. The notes of an accordion float across from the billets. Often we lay aside the cards and look about us. One of us will say, "Well, boys," or "It was near a thing that time," and for a moment we fall silent. There is in each of us a feeling of constraint. We are all sensible of it. It needs no words to communicate it. It might easily have happened that we should not be sitting here on our boxes today. It came damn near to that. And so everything is new and brave. Red poppies and good food, cigarettes and summer breeze. Krop asks, "Anyone seen Kimmerick lately?" "He's up at St. Joseph's," I tell him. Mueller explains that he has a flesh wound in his thigh, a good blighty. We decide to go and see him this afternoon. Krop pulls out a letter. "Cantorek sends you all his best wishes." Sorry. We laugh. Mueller throws his cigarette away and says, "I wish he was here." Cantorek had been our schoolmaster, a stern little man in a gray tailcoat with a face like a shrew mouse. He was about the same size as Corporal Himmeltoss, the terror of Klosterberg. It is very queer that the unhappiness of the world is so often brought on by small men. They are so much more energetic and uncompromising than the big fellows. I have always taken good care to keep out of sections with small company commanders. They are most confounded little martinets. Not marionettes, martinets. During drill time, Cantorek gave us all long lectures until the whole of our class went under his shepherding to the district commandment and volunteered. I can see him now, as he used to glare at us through his spectacles and say in a moving voice, "Won't you join up, comrades?" These teachers always carry their feelings ready in their waistcoat pockets and trot them out by the hour. But we didn't think of that then. There was indeed one of us who hesitated and did not want to fall into line. That was Joseph Bim, a plump, homely fellow. But he did allow himself to be persuaded. Otherwise he would have been ostracized. And perhaps more of us thought as he did, but no one could very well stand out, because at the time, even one's parents were ready with the word coward. No one had the vaguest idea of what we were in for. The wisest were just the poor and simple people. They knew the war to be a misfortune, whereas those who were better off and should have been able to see more clearly what the consequences would be were beside themselves with joy. Kaczynski said that there was a result of their upbringing. It made them stupid, and what Kat said, he thought about. Strange to say, Bim was the first to fall. He got hit in the eye during an attack, and we left him lying for dead. We couldn't bring him with us, because he had to come back helter-skelter. In the afternoon, suddenly we heard him call, and saw him crawling about in no man's land. He had only been knocked unconscious. Because he could not see, and he was mad with pain, he failed to keep under cover, and he was shot down before anyone could go and fetch him. Naturally, we couldn't blame Cantorek for this. Where would the world be if one brought every man to book? There were thousands of Cantoreks, all of whom were convinced that they were acting for the best, in a way that cost them nothing. And that is why they let us down so badly. For us lads of 18, they ought to have been mediators and guides to the world of maturity, the world of work, of duty, of culture, of progress, to the future. We often made fun of them and played jokes on them, but in our hearts, we trusted them. The idea of authority, which they represented, was associated in our minds with a greater insight and a more humane wisdom. But the first death we saw shattered this disbelief. We had to recognize that our generation was more to be trusted than theirs. They surpassed us only in phrases and in cleverness. The first bombardment showed us our mistake, and under it the world as they had taught us to be broken to pieces. While they continued to write and talk, we saw the wounded and dying. While they taught that duty to one's country is the greatest thing, we already knew that the death throes are stronger. But for all that we were, no mutineers, no deserters, no cowards. They were very free with all these expressions. We loved our country as much as they. We went courageously into every action, but also we distinguished the false from true. We had suddenly learned to see, and we saw that there was nothing of their world left. We were all once terribly alone, and alone we must see it through. Before going over to see Kemmerich, we pack up his things. He will need them on the way back. In the dressing station, there is great activity. It reeks as of ever carbolic, pus, and sweat. We are accustomed to a good deal in the billets, but this makes us feel faint. We ask for Kemmerich. He lies in a large room and receives us with feeble expressions of joy and helpless agitation. While he was unconscious, someone had stolen his watch. Mueller shakes his head. I always told you that nobody should carry as good a watch as that. Mueller is rather crude and tactless. Otherwise, he would hold his tongue, for anybody can see that Kemmerich will never come out of this place again. Whether he finds his watch or not will make no difference. At the most, no one will be able to send it to his people. How goes it, Franz? Asked Kropp. Kemmerich's head sinks. Not so bad, but I have such a damned pain in my foot. We look at his bed covering. His leg lies under a wire basket. The bed covering arches over it. I kick Mueller in the shin, for he is just about to tell Kemmerich what the orderlies told us on the outside, that Kemmerich has lost his foot. The leg is amputated. He looks ghastly, yellow and wan. In his face, there are already the strained lines that we know so well. We have seen them now hundreds of times. They are not so much lines as marks. Under the skin, the life no longer pulses. It has already pressed out the boundaries of the body. Death is working through from within. It already has command in his eyes. Here lies our comrade, Kemmerich, who a little while ago was roasting horseflesh with us and squatting in the shell holes. It is still, and yet it is no he any longer. His features have become uncertain and faint, like a photograph plate from which two pictures have been taken. Even his voice sounds like ashes. I think of the time when we went away. His mother, a good plump matron, brought him to the station. She wept continually. Her face was bloated and swollen. Kemmerich felt embarrassed, for she was the least composed of all. She simply dissolved into fat and water. Then she caught sight of me and took hold of my arm again and again, and implored me to look after Franz out there. Indeed, he did have a face like a child, and such frail bones that after 4 weeks, pack carrying, he already had flat feet. But how can a man look after anyone in the field? Now you will soon be going home, says Kropp. You would have to wait at least 3 or 4 months for you leave. Kemmerich nods. I cannot bear to look at his hands. They are like wax. Under the nails is the dirt of the trenches. It shows through blue-black like poison. It strikes me that these nails will continue to grow like lean, fantastic cellar plants long after Kemmerich breathes no more. I see the picture before me. They twist themselves into corkscrews and grow and grow. And with them, the hair on the decaying skull, just like grass in the good soil, just like grass. How can it be possible? Mueller leans over. We have brought you your things, Franz. Kimmerich signs with his hands. Put them under the bed. Mueller does so. Kimmerich starts on again about the watch. How can one calm him without making him suspicious? Mueller reappears with a pair of airman's boots. They are fine English boots of soft yellow leather, which reach to the knees and lace all the way up. They are things to be coveted. Mueller is delighted at the sight of them. He matches their soles against his own clumsy boots and says, "Will you be taking them with you then, Franz?" We all three have the same thought. Even if he should get better, he wouldn't be able to use only but one. They are no use to him. But as things are now, it is a pity that they should stay here. The orderlies will, of course, grab them as soon as he is dead. Won't you leave them with us? Mueller repeats. Kimmerich doesn't want to. They are his most prized possessions. Well, we could exchange, suggests Mueller again. Out here, one can make some use of them. Still, Kimmerich is not to be moved. I tread on Mueller's foot. Reluctantly, he puts the fine boots back under the bed. We talk a little more and then take our leave. Cheerio, Franz. Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the story. This is All Quiet on the Western Front. As I said earlier, this book just became public domain, and I think I remember reading it in junior high or in high school. And I'm just recording it now, so anyway, I hope y'all enjoy it. I promise him to come back in the morning. Mueller talks of doing so, too. He is thinking of the lace-up boots and means to be on the spot. Kimmerich groans. He is feverish. We get hold of an orderly outside and ask him to give Kimmerich a dose of morphia. He refuses. If we were to give him morphia, to everyone we would have tubs full. You only attend to officers properly, says Kropp viciously. I hastily intervene and give him a cigarette. He takes it. Are you usually allowed to give it then? I ask him. He is annoyed. If you don't think so, then why do you ask? I press a few more cigarettes into his hand. Do us the favor. Well, all right, he says. Kropp goes in with him. He doesn't trust him and wants to see. We wait outside. Mueller returns to the subject of the boots. They would fit me perfectly. In these boots, I get blister after blister. Do you think he will last till tomorrow after drill? If he passes out in the night, we know where the boots... Kropp returns. Do you think, he asks. Done for, says Mueller emphatically. We go back into the huts. I think of the letter that I must write tomorrow to Kemmerich's mother. I am freezing. I could do with a tot of rum. Mueller pulls up some grass and chews it. Suddenly, little Kropp throws his cigarette away, stamps it out savagely, and looks around him with a broken and distracted face. Stammers, damn shit. The damn shit. We walk on for a long time. Kropp has calmed himself. We understand. He saw red. Out here, every man gets like that sometime. What has Kontarek written to you? Mueller asks him. He laughs. We are the Iron Youth. We all three smile bitterly. Kropp rails. He is glad that he can speak. Yes, that's the way they think. These 100,000 Kantareks. Iron Youth. Youth! We are none of us more than 20 years old. But young? Youth? That is long ago. We are old folk. That was chapter 1 of All Quiet on the Western Front. I'm just trying out something new. I was just doing a live reading here on the mic. So if y'all enjoy the readings, live readings, let me know. And as long as it's public domain, I can read it, because there's no copyright on it anymore once it reaches public domain. So if y'all want any book read that is public domain, I am happy to give it a shot and see how it does on here. But other than that, I do voiceovers from time to time. I get auditions a lot, but probably out of every 100 or so auditions, maybe one I'll get. So that it kind of stinks, doing audition after audition after audition. And the thing is, with auditions, they don't generally send you back any kind of critiques or tell you that you did or did not. They'll tell you if you got the job, but if you didn't get the job, they won't tell you. You just kind of apply and then let it go out of your mind. So that's really it for now. I appreciate everyone watching as always. Thank you for watching and giving thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And tomorrow I'm going to be doing something special, doing on a live stream. So make sure to tune in for that. This evening I'll be working out. I have it scheduled for 5 p.m. So about 2 hours and 15 minutes from now, I'll be working out. So if you want to tune in to that, I'll be there. So again, thank you everyone for watching and supporting me. I really appreciate it. Goodbye.